All right. Well, howdy everyone. Sorry about the delays. We had some technical difficulties with the YouTube live stream and it got started early. And so we wanted to make sure that you guys could have your full hour of content because let me tell you, today is going to be such a good one. If you couldn't tell, I'm relaxing on the beach. So if you, but I do have all the chats open on YouTube and in the Zoom call. As always, if you would have any questions, please feel free to send us a chat or to go ahead and unmute if you're in the Zoom call. We'd love to hear from you. And yeah, without further ado, let's get started. Uh, like I said, today is the webinar from appsheettraining.com. We're Crew Tech. My name is Clark James. I'll be your host. I'm also here with Mr. Stefan Quartermont, the president / CEO of Crew Technologies. And we have, like I said, a really good one for you today. It's going to be automated document generation. Um, I would go into a little bit more depth, but Stefan told me that we have a lot to cover. So without further ado, the main concepts are going to be auto creating basic templates for your documents, template customization, as well as file location nuances. So without further ado, Stefan, if you want to go ahead and take over, I'll let you go ahead and.
All right, man. Sounds good. Thank you very much, Clark. And yeah, we hopefully we'll have a full episode today, unless I just blaze through this thing. Automated document generation is a huge need inside of companies, and it's one of the major unique value propositions that AppSheet brings. So its document generation capabilities are unparalleled in no-code platforms from what I've seen. So I'm very excited to show you guys sort of a medium medium skill level implementation of these templates so that you can kind of get a grasp of how they work and some of the uniquenesses about them and things that kind of make them a little bit tricky. And hopefully we'll walk through a few of those points and you should get a clear roadmap of how to build your own documents based on data inside of your applications. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. All right. And I am starting from total scratch today. So I want you to see the whole process just because there's some, I mentioned file nuances in the concepts. There are some tricky things with where files and templates end up in your folder structure that I want to work through today and kind of help you navigate. So I'm going to just create a blank spreadsheet for this app. And this is going to be a simple order inventory order app. I'll just call it order app. And I'm going to make a table called orders. And we'll give that an ID. We'll give it a creator, created date time. Make sure we get our nice metadata fields in there. And why not put a status? And that's all we're going to do for order. And then we're going to make another table that is going to be a related table to orders. So an order usually has a list of many items that are being ordered. So this is a parent-child relationship between an order and order items. Orders being the parent, and order item being the child. And there's actually a third data table that we're going to create here, but I'll give you some more insight on that in a second. Oops. Okay, so the ID, we want to know what order it was associated with. So I'm going to say order ID. And then we'll give the same creator, created date. And then we're going to have item and quantity. And I'm going to put an amount column here, but we are probably not going to have time to build it out all the way, but I want you to kind of see that this is typically what that progression looks like in terms of data fields that we'll have in an order, or this is similar to like inventory checkout or different types of, stock related business applications. So this is our order item. This is the actual thing that's going to exist as part of our order. An order will have many of these. And an order item will also be related to just a regular item. So these are things that are in hypothetical inventory right now. So we'll give it, we'll give an item a name and a price. And let's go ahead and put some fake data in here. So I'll go with ABC 1, 2, 3. Apple, $2. All right. And we're going to leave these blank because we're going to end up creating them. Actually, yes, we'll end up creating them from our app instead of with test data in here. So something that's important is that our item is actually going to be tied in here, item ID. So we have a relationship in this column back to the order, and then we have a relationship in this column back to the item. So an item will have many related order items, and an order will have many related order items. That dynamics, when there are two parents that kind of share children, this is called a many-to-many data relationship. And it's a bit more complex and can be tricky to understand, but hopefully you'll see why we use this and why it shows up a lot in document templates. So I could start here with getting an AppSheet add-on, or I'm going to go actually back to the My Apps page, and I'm going to make a new app off of this data table. And I'm going to pick data from my Google Drive, and I've got my orders spreadsheet right there. AppSheet's going to analyze my table and try to build an app. I don't have a lot of data in there, so that's not going to be super helpful for AppSheet. It's going to try its best, but we'll still have to do some configuration. Okay, so this app is spun up, and I'm going to start in the data tab, and I'm going to bring in all my other data tables. So AppSheet recognized that there are two other tables in my sheet, so I'm just going to follow the quick actions here to add them in. All right, so I brought in my data tables, and now I need to configure the column definition for each table to make sure AppSheet's interpreting each field correctly. So our order ID is going to be our key field. If you are unfamiliar with what a key and a label is, this is like a unique identifier, or I call it the social security number of an individual row in a table. So it's something that is different than every other row, and it's the thing that you will always, that the computer will search for people for. The label is the human readable version of the name for a particular row. It doesn't always have to be unique, but is usually unique. I'm going to collapse my app on the right just to give us a little extra space here. Usually I don't show IDs. I like to hide them. And because AppSheet puts this initial value in called unique ID, which is just a random string of letters and numbers, and it's really not valuable to users inside the app. So I just hide it so long as it's properly set up there, which it is. And I'm going to set an initial value here for our creator column, and I'm just going to use the user email formula. This will enter the email address of whoever is logged into the app at that moment, and created date time set to a date, but I want that to be a date time. So we get hours, minutes, and seconds along with that. And the formula for that is now instead of today. And status, let's make this an enum column. This allows us to make it a drop down and define some values. So I've clicked into the order, the column details here to type enum, and I'm going to add some values here. So pending, complete, and trashed. Probably should do completed, keep it consistent. And let's make it default to pending. So default values, you would put in the auto compute section under initial value. That way, whenever a new row is created, it will put this value in. But when you update it, it doesn't recalculate. If I put it in the app formula, it'll always try to change it to whatever whatever that formula would suggest. So, and I like buttons, so I'm going to make them be buttons instead of a drop down. And we're going to require that status. Okay, order is set up. And before I set up order item, I'm actually going to do item, because in our data hierarchy, we have order as a parent and item as a parent. So I like to start from the top down. Again, we have our ID. AppSheet set it up automatically for us. So the work is done. I'm going to hide that column. Name is set great. Price is price. That's looking excellent. Okay, I'm going to require name because that's something that every item should have. Now that I've got both of those set up, I can properly configure the child. So order ID, because I want it to reference back to the order itself, I'm going to use the ref column type. And it's going to ask me, what table is this thing supposed to be related to? I'm going to point it to the order table. And I'm going to press done. And then same thing for item ID. I want this to be a reference to the item table. And we'll press done there. Quantity is going to be a number field. And then amount is actually going to be calculated, which we will set that up later, but this is going to end up being a price. And then creator and text, or creator and created date time. The creator is going to autofill to the user email. And then we wanted to do now instead of today, because we want the minutes and seconds. Okay. And if I was keeping the app clean, instead of showing order ID and item ID, which are nice from a data recognition standpoint, if I'm going to see it in the spreadsheet, I want to know that those are references. But to the user, they don't really care about that. So I'm just going to call them order and item. So I'm going to adjust the display name field, and that changes how this column name appears across the app. Okay, going to save that. AppSheet gave me a warning, probably saying, hey, you can't search this column because it's hidden. Thank you, AppSheet. Appreciate the heads up. So opening the app back up, and then actually taking a look over here at info and spec. This is like a data diagram, and it doesn't appear to have updated to show our data relationships yet. So I was going to show you that, but I guess not. We'll just move on here. In fact, let me refresh the page. We're seeming to get a little bit of slowness on the load. Oh, there's our spec. Okay, so we see that data relationship that I was verbally describing earlier, where an order can have many order items and an item can have many order items. So we have 2 parents, 1 child. This is a many to many relationship between orders and items. Okay, now let's put together a couple of views here. We don't need a calendar view. Our order is of type card, but I'm just going to make it a table view for now. And I'm going to add our first order. So it has pre-filled the name and the time. I'm going to save that order. And oops, forgot to push that sync through. Let's do that again. There it is. Okay. So we have our first pending order. And if I want to add some items to it, it pre-filled the ID, which I need to hide, by the way. I can select an item. I want an orange. And I want 3 oranges. And then I want also 1 Tesla, because why not? Okay, so I've got 2 items in my order, and we can kind of see that because of the related inline view here. That was, this field was actually auto created. Whenever you build a relationship between tables, the parent, go to the column structure here, so data and columns, we can see a little blue pencil here indicating that this is a virtual column, meaning it is a calculated field that only exists in the app and will not be shown in your underlying data source. And there's a formula here that describes the table reference relationship between an order item and an order. And it generates a list of all of the order items that were related to this order. So AppSheet does this automatically every time you build a reference. The parent item gets a virtual column that contains a list of all the children, and AppSheet displays it as an inline view. So we can find that out by pressing view here to see this in the full emulator, and the tag down here, view order item inline, will take us directly to that view, which is a system view. It's a little bit hidden. So I have to press show system views. And now I'm editing the order item inline. Oh, I closed it. I'm going to just configure the column order here to be a little more logical. I would like to see the item. I would like to see the quantity and the amount. That's all I really care about. And maybe I want to see quantity first. Excellent. And we'll sort by the item ID ascending. And I'm going to save that. Okay, so we've got our first order set up. It has some order items, and I would like to generate a PDF document of describing this order so that it could get emailed to the recipient maybe whenever the status changes from pending to completed. So what I'll do is I'm going to go to behavior, and under the workflow tab, there are some suggested automations here that we could do, but I'm going to just create a new workflow rule, and I'm going to call it completed order PDF. And it's asking me what is the target data I want this to be looking at to observe a change. And I'm going to let it sit on the order table. And it's asking what type of update event should I be watching for? And right now it's set to all changes, but I'm going to change it to updates only, meaning I want to control it from a intentional user interaction as an update instead of any possible interaction as all changes. And more than that, I want it to only happen when the status changes to completed. So I'm going to use a formula in the if this is true condition box. And this is not a widely published expression, but it is super valuable for workflows. So, I can only do this type of expression in a workflow or something that happens on the server side of AppSheet's logic. So workflows and reports are where that occurs. And it is, I believe, this row before, and then the name of the column I want to be watching, which is status, does not equal this row after, status. So that means somebody changed the status during this operation. But I also want to know that it changed to completed. So I have to add another condition. When we want to compare multiple conditions, we have to use an and expression to test if multiple things are all true. So the way that works is I'll put it at the beginning, and everything inside of my parentheses, I don't have to do this indenting and entering, but it makes it a little bit easier to read. So that's why I do it. Everything inside these parentheses has to be true. And you separate each logical test or argument with a comma. So I put a comma here, and then I'm going to enter my second logical test, which is status must equal completed. I should be getting a green light here. Great. AppSheet tries to read it out to me. It says all these statements are true. One, the value of this column is not equal to the value here. And then status is equal to completed. Perfect. So again, this row dot status basically says this row before your sync or before your change was equal, the status column of that row ID is equal to or does not equal the row after the sync status column. So the status value before and after the sync are different, indicating that somebody changed intentionally the status column. So there we go. And then in the do this section, my action that I want to perform is create order PDF. Oh, closed it on me. And I could email this to myself, but I would like to show you guys, actually, no, we'll email it. We'll call it new order for the subject. And I'm going to leave the body content default. And I'm going to send this email to the user. So I'm going to use my user email formula there. Okay. I'm doing a lot of setup here. If anybody has any questions about what I'm doing so far, just let me know. And I will, I'd be happy to slow down or give you any contextual information on what I've done so far. Okay, so we have our data structure set, our column set, we have some test data in here, we have our workflow set up, the condition trigger is set, and we have the do this action of emailing somebody for our new order. So just to test that, I'm going to go in and change this from pending to completed. I'm going to force the sync. And there we go. We have an email in our inbox. And it just has the default details of my order, which is fine. But I want to expand on that, and I would like to have a PDF attachment. So I've scrolled down to the attachment content type, attachment template, attachment name, and file store section of my email workflow. This feature is also available in save file, but we're going to stick with the email. Oh, I just deleted everything. That's okay. Refresh button. Okay. So let's get this attachment template set up. AppSheet does us a solid, and they have this create button. And what this does is it creates a Google Doc template for us to customize with some basic material in it, which is very helpful, especially if you're new to the document template expression language, which has all these double carets, which can be a little bit daunting or confusing as to what does what and why. Okay, so I waited a few seconds after pressing the create button, and AppSheet returned a document ID here. This is an ID for a Google Doc that it just created for me. And if I press view, it opens that document for me and shows me some cool stuff. So completed order PDF gives me a title based on my workflow name. It says, hey, here's the details from the order table, gives me my 3 columns. And then it also includes order item information in a nice little table, assuming that I would like to see all my records printed out. Now, a simple merge tag, that's easily understandable as to what it does. This is going to, between these carets, it's going to execute this expression, which you may or may not be familiar with, but any column name inside square brackets means print the value of this column. So that's going to print the creator value, the created date time value, and the status value. But then we come down to this table and we see some of those familiar things. This is going to print the order ID, the item ID, and the quantity and the amount. But we also see some other tags here: start and end. So this is AppSheet's expression syntax for saying, hey, I've got a list of things that I want you to run through. And for each item in here, I want you to print out the ID, order ID, and anything else between the start and end tags. So this is really helpful for this particular use case where we're going to have multiple order items rather than having to guess how many. And I would hard code all of these tags for 2, 3, 4, 5, or really there's no way to know how many the user would put in. AppSheet gives us this handy start expression. So it's
Stefan?
Oh yeah, Jake?
Your start expression doesn't specify a table. It just goes straight to a column.
That is a good observation. So I'm going to stretch this out a little bit. Oh, mercy. So that we can see a little bit better. So in fact, I will actually copy this out and put it over here and bold it up. Okay, so the syntax for this starter is double carets, start, colon, and then after that, it expects you to pass a list of keys. So a list of IDs of records in another table. Normally, if we wanted to pass all the order items, we would write it like this: the name of the table, order item, and then the name of the column we wanted to return, which would be ID. And if we wanted to filter that, we could put it inside of a select expression or inside of a filter expression. And all that does is return a list of IDs. So saying order item ID is equivalent to coming over here to our orders table and saying, I want everything in column B. column A, because these are the order IDs. Order item table, ID column, give me everything in this column, which right now is only 2 values. And so it would return just these numbers back to AppSheet, but AppSheet recognizes it as a key column for another table and says, okay, you've given me the key for all these records. I can go and search based on that key and return other row information. So if you give me the key for this row, I can give you anything else in the row. So that being stated, what we have here is the column related order items. This column, again, I mentioned was a virtual column. It only exists in the AppSheet, only exists in AppSheet, so not in our spreadsheet, related order items. And this is a list column, and it's a list of keys from the order item table. So when we built that relationship between orders and order items, AppSheet created this, and it lists all of the order items that are related to this row's order ID. So to step through that, we're saying this order has an order ID of 5A95E944. That virtual column looks in the order item table and searches for everything that has an order ID of the same value. And then it returns the keys. So we end up with these 2 values, which is the same result as this expression here. We would have to filter this to always get the same result. But this column is technically equivalent to this plus a filter for the current order row. And in fact, you can treat this as if it is its own subtable in the app. So you could say this, which would return a list of item IDs from everything in this subtable of keys, sublist of keys, which we know this is the full sublist, just these 2 items because they're related to the order ID. And so that formula would actually return ABC123 and ABC125. So that is just a little, it's kind of tricky to understand. You know, we're used to seeing table and column notation, list notation like this. But these related columns that are lists of keys can be treated as if they are their own table names. So that is a fantastic question. And this is a hurdle that a lot of people get stuck on, especially with templates. So I'm very glad you asked.
Got it. Thanks.
So we have the start expression here, related order items. And so for every key or every order item record, print ID, order ID, item ID, quantity, amount, and then stop. And then move to the next one. And it will basically add a new line to this table and keep printing them out until it circles through or loops through all of the related order items. And now let's continue our configuration here and do a quick test. So we're back in behavior in the workflow tab, opening our workflow, stepping into that action. And let's give it an attachment name. And let's say, let's call it order underscore, and I'm going to put a merge tag in here for, let's grab a column with our crew tools here from our order, the created date time, just copy that. And it's set to attach and not archive. We're going to leave it that way, but I will turn this on in a minute so we can explore some of those file saving nuances. All right, so we've got our test here. And let's set up our trigger again. So I change it to trashed. If I set it up properly, it should not send me a new order. All right, I've got nothing. Now, if I move it back to completed, force the sync, I should be getting a new order here in a few seconds. There we go. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer when we do the document generation. There we go. It has to, the workflow goes through a few extra steps behind the scenes. So now we have the same email, but we have a PDF attachment, and it is the named with the naming convention that I set up for it. And if we look at it, it is a very plain filled out version of our table. We see the two records that are related, and we notice that it's giving us a lot of things that nobody understands what these mean. Nobody cares what the ID is, and it's showing us the raw order ID and item ID for our records. Now, I would personally like it to look a little bit more like our related order items here with quantity, item, and amount, and that's it. So I'm going to delete a couple of columns. And I'm going to rename this one to item. And instead of showing the ID here, I'm going to show the item ID. Now, again, that is going to print out this value, ABC123, ABC125, which is not what I want. So I'm going to use a dereference formula, which is something you can do when you're printing out a reference column. You can use a dereference to extract a value from that row that's identified by this reference point. So for that item ID, I want to follow through this item ID, ABC123, and I want to return its name. So this is very similar to VLOOKUP in a spreadsheet, but it's a lot more simple to write. You just put a period and then the name of the column, which I think is name. Yes, name. And then close the brackets. So reach through the key, or I like to call it the door, reach through the door identified by the item ID and pull out the name. And why not stretch this out and do a little bit of formatting? The margins here are really tight on this table. So what I could do is I could right click on it and click table properties, and I could add some cell padding. So I'm just going to add 0.08 to my cell padding, and I'm going to choose middle vertical alignment. And we see that it set up those columns nicely. Let's do that again and make sure that's stuck. Sometimes it looks like it only modified one of our columns. Great. Okay, so that's a little bit more fresh looking. Should be more readable. And why don't we try this again? Okay, now that is going to generate here for a second while we're waiting on it. I'm going to do our next change, which is a simple change. I'm going to say attach and archive. So for my attachment archive option, I'm saying attach and archive it. And I'm going to use my default file store, which is my Google Drive for this account. I'm going to save that. Should have our new email here. There we go. And we'll look at our order. Oh, that's looking a lot better. Apple, Tesla, quantity 3, quantity 1. I'm enjoying that. Okay. Now I've turned on attach and archive, and I will show you what this does. Go back to pending. Go back to completed to trigger our event again. Now I've left the attachment folder path blank. And this says the relative folder path where attachments are saved. It's only respected by some data sources, which it is respected by Google Drive. And you can leave blank for the default behavior. Now, I have my spreadsheet right here in my Google Drive. So at the root level, the top of my drive, I have this spreadsheet. And we have confirmation that this new order was created. Now, where is it? I'm going to save you some trouble and tell you that there's an AppSheet folder in your My Drive. Inside of that folder is a data folder. And inside of that is a list of your apps. So I'm going to open the folder for my app, and it has content, and it has attachments. And we see this kind of crazy thing that just happened. I have a folder called 15 and a folder called Order 10. And I didn't make those. AppSheet made those for me. So why and where did they come from? So this path, if you look at the top, My Drive to the AppSheet folder, to data, to order demo 1374619. This path of where this data should live gets defined in the info and properties area of my app. So inside of app properties, I have some metadata about my app, but I have this default app folder location. We can see it starts at the root or slash AppSheet slash data slash order demo 1374619. Let's say for this use case, I don't want it to go there anymore. I want it to go to a new folder that I'll make here at the root level of my drive called orders. So I'm going to remap it at the info level here. I'm going to say slash to indicate start at the root of my file storage system, and then drop it in the orders folder. Now, to address why my file got dropped into a series of folders before, particularly inside of the attachments folder, order underscore 10, 15, and then we have this, this document that's there. Anytime when you are saving a file via AppSheet, AppSheet interprets the slash. Let me get in here. It interprets the slash mark as a new folder name. And if you send it to a path, so by default, it's going to save in the same directory that I defined in my app properties. And then it's going to put it in the attachments folder. And then it's going to put it inside it's going to just drop it right in. But if the file name includes slashes, then it's going to make a new folder. It's going to try to search for that folder. If it doesn't find a folder named that thing, it's going to create one and then put the file inside there. So what I want to do, because I have a date in here and dates are usually formatted with slashes, it was breaking it up and putting it in this series of folders that I did not originally intend. So I'm going to define a custom folder path. And hopefully I do this right. Let's just call it files. or better yet, receipts. And the attachment name, I'm going to change to, I'm going to use the text formula. Oops. And I'm going to format this date time differently. So I'm going to format it as month. Instead of a slash, I'm going to use a dash, day, dash, year, underscore, hour, minute, second, quote. And hopefully that works. And I'm kind of tired of hitting this edit button. So I'm just going to use the quick link down here for view. I'm going to go to the order detail, and I'm going to make status a quick edit column. That way I can just change it really quick and re-trigger my order. Okay, now let's go back into Drive and see if anything happens inside of this orders folder. Actually, better yet, let me watch my email for the file. Okay, there we go. All right, so we see the file name here followed our custom formatting without slashes. So hopefully we didn't break into different subfolders. We now have a receipts folder inside of our orders folder and an empty .text. I believe this happens just when AppSheet creates a new root folder. It throws an empty text file because there's some sort of requirement there from Google Drive to actually create a folder. You have to pass something into it. So I'll open receipts, and there we go. We have our order landed right where we wanted, but it has an adjustment in the file name. Order 105011-19, and it kind of goes off into this weird series of numbers and underscores and stuff. I'll tell you what this is. If we go back to our settings for our workflow in the behavior tab under workflow, step into our action. We go to the bottom. There is a toggle here for disable timestamp. So it says if the timestamp suffix is not added, which is what that was, it didn't look much like a timestamp. I think it was a Unix timestamp. If the timestamp suffix is not added, the attachment names may not be unique, meaning you may not be able to find what file is what. You could have things named the same things or things named the same, and that would be confusing. So AppSheet helps us in our ignorance here, but if we recognize the risk and we say, okay, I need to make sure I'm naming things somewhat unique or putting them in unique locations, because you can actually define automated file paths here or dynamic file paths. So I'll concatenate a couple of things. So I'm going to put this in the receipts folder / and I'm concatenating in the creator, which is an email address, which isn't going to be pretty, but I'll show you kind of how that works. And then I'm going to disable the timestamp. Okay, let's re-trigger. And we'll watch our email for that confirmation. And it's probably taking a little extra time because we put in a new folder route. And so it's doing a little bit more API work with the Google Drive API. All right, so we have our resulting order come to us via email. Let's check out our Drive. Okay, so now inside of orders and receipts, we have a new folder for info@appsheettraining.com. This is like automatically creating a folder for a new customer, which is definitely something that a lot of businesses do when they're trying to structure their file storage. So that's a nice automated step there. Now we have our order, and it doesn't have that weird string of numbers in there. This is the 11, 9, 15. So
It should be the
didn't,
time.
yeah, 11, 9,
I don't know why I
15
didn't do the
seconds.
colons.
So it, AppSheet reinterprets certain characters that are not safe for file names. So it recognizes colon as not being safe for the file name and replaced it. So that's what that's all about there. All right. Now, to put the icing on the cake, the cherry on top, let's calculate our amount. Make this a more full experience. Go into data, columns. So this is more of the reason why we even added the item table, is so that we can have attributes that we set in one table that become dynamic in another table, or get used in calculations dynamically. So really what we want to do is we want to multiply an item's price here by its quantity in the order item to get the amount. So I will write a formula here. And that dereference that I talked about before, we're going to grab the item by its ID. We're going to go through that door and we're going to pull back its price. And then we're going to multiply that price by this row's quantity. And if I wanted to test that, AppSheet will run that on every row and say, hey, you ordered 3 apples and an apple is $2. Whoops. And so it sums up to 6 because we multiply it by the quantity. And then you got 1 Tesla and that's 30 grand. Great. Now that doesn't immediately change our data. Those amounts are still blank. That's because this is a static column and it's not recalculated automatically. It's only recalculated when we edit the row. So now that I edit it, the amount is $6. Also, why am I showing the ID here? Label should be order ID. Actually, label should be item. We'll do item label. I like that. Okay. Great. Let's save. Let's update the price for our Tesla. Now we see it, 30,000. And let's add another item. Let's get some oranges. And this is going to be a big order. And let's resend. And we should be seeing a new file here shortly. You got our new order, 10, 15, 11, 19. Oh, I'm glad this happened. So our order time is not changing. It's a static column. right? In our order, we've set the created date time once, 11:19 and 15 seconds. Now, because that's the case, and we turned off the timestamp on our file, the default behavior is to overwrite the previous file named the same thing. So it generated a file with the same name, but now we see it has updated data in it. So that could be a surprise, but it is also a valuable feature if you're trying to upsert documents over time as they as something goes through the fulfillment process. If you're continually updating the values of something and you need documents every time, but you don't want to retain the old ones, if you name them all the same, it will dynamically overwrite them in Google Drive. In fact, I wonder if we can see a document history here. Manage versions. Yeah, actually the versions are retained. So I wonder if it'll let me see it. I can download it, I guess. Can't see it automatically, but yeah. So that is, we didn't make this beautiful or fancy. That could be another webinar, but that was an extensive walk through the mechanics of the creation and a lot of the nuances that trip people up and end up with 3 or 4 forum posts of where's my file? Why is it named funny? I can't get my naming to work. How do I attach it? How do I make the templates? How do I use start expressions? We covered a lot of those bases. So hope this enriched you and opened up some possibilities for you in terms of your automated document creation with AppSheet. All right, Clark, back to you, my man. I'm going to kill my screen share here.
Thanks, Stefan.
You are very welcome.
Excellent. All right. Well, you should have my screen again. Hopefully, if, Zoom's working correctly. Stefan, thank you so much. That was very enlightening, and I hope everybody got a lot out of it. Well, like I said before, we are CrewTech. We are AppSheetTraining.com, and we'd love to help you guys. Every week, we're going to be doing these webinars every week, trying to at least. It does help us a lot if you're able to subscribe to our YouTube channel and to get your friends to also watch these videos. It's how we're able to keep these things free, trying to get content out for you guys, make it super available for you all. But if you'd like to subscribe to those webinars, we do have that at appsheettraining.com/webinar. At appsheettraining.com, we do have several on-demand courses, all of which are very, very good. Ben worked really, really hard on those. And we do have something new. I've said it the last few weeks, but AppSheet IQ, this tool is very, very beneficial for newer users with AppSheet. It's going to allow you to see all the things that you may need more work on, and it's going to tell you, hey, you need to check out the UX design course in appsheettraining.com. It's very, very beneficial. You can see it, a little brief demo of it on this laptop here. And if you would like some expert advice or consulting on your apps that you already have built or that you need built, please feel free to contact us. We do offer development support for those things. I have linked my email here. Feel free, any questions about the webinar, any questions about anything at all. Personal life, you need some advice about relationships, I'm all for it. I'll try to help out as much as I can. But yeah, that should conclude the webinar. If you have any questions, now is your time to final time to ask Stefan or myself those for the live stream.
Just a quickie there, Stefan. In the start expression, if I want to refer to a column which has is called ID, it's key, but I have 3 tables, and all of their ID columns are called ID. I'll have to use the select expression then, right? I'll have to say select table name ID, comma, true, and then it'll return everything specifically for that one table.
Yes. Yes. Now,
Okay.
if you have them as related lists in some parent table, that's something you could use. Those related lists are already targeted to the table specifically. But oftentimes when you do reports, we didn't talk about reports specifically, which are timed creations or triggers of workflows. Those you can choose to run in the context of a table, or in the context of a row, or the context of a whole table or the whole app, which means you rely more on specifically telling AppSheet what table and what rows I want to print this information for. And then you can put more start expressions. You can put nested start expressions. So take this table for every row, do another start expression and all of its children print out, then go to the next one and print out all of its children. So that type of dynamic is definitely supported.
Thanks.
All right. Sounds good. I think that's all of our questions. Like I said, please feel free to reach out at this email posted here with any questions if you run across something later on. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and kill the stream. Hopefully I get everything out because I know that there is a delay on YouTube. So
thank you, Clark. You did awesome. Appreciate you guys. Everybody have a good one.
Thank you, John.